Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a round of applause? A big hearty welcome to Honorable Mr. Jayant Sinha, Minister of State for Civil Aviation, Government of India. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Here we proudly present our first session, Mindmine Exchange India in 2017. More air pockets or Achhe din? This is a one-on-one exchange between Mr. Jayant Sinha, Minister of State for Civil Aviation, Government of India, and Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal. With a big round of applause, can we start the session? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Jayant. Thank you for coming in this morning. We just had the inaugural session before this with Minister Venkaiah Naidu and Minister Suresh Prabhu, both of whom are doing a pretty amazing job in their chosen areas. What we were talking about is that this is a nation which is making transformative changes right now. First, because we really have no choice. If we want to meet the aspirations of all Indians, and the stress is on all Indians, not just on a few Indians who have access, who have privilege, that there are some things which are going to need to change. India has always been open to change. It's our history, it's our culture. If you look at us through millennia, we have transformed many, many times over. In recent times too, actually, we often forget that in the 60 years since independence, we've actually improved in every decade. Decade on decade, we've got better, but our challenge continues to be the poverty in which a large section of our population still lives. So all that we do, therefore, needs to figure out how do you create sustainable economic opportunities for people, livelihoods, jobs, entrepreneurship. There's a series of things which need to continue to get promoted, both by government and by the private sector playing a responsible role. In fact, it's a partnership of the two which can create the transformation that we're looking for. Now, you have an interesting background. You've been a banker. You've been a money manager. You've become a politician and a minister. And you handled two critical areas in the government. First with finance, and now in an area which in many ways we hope will touch all Indians. And you've used a slogan which, by the way, I've copied of yours and used again many times. Hum Hawai Chappal pehne wale ko Hawai Jahaz pe chalayenge. So I think our compliments are due to you for taking on this big, bold mission, because it is also a well-known fact that connectivity is transformational. We saw it when we started to build the Golden Quadrilateral and the roads in India some times back. We've seen it when we enhanced the port capacity, when we connected even within Delhi, when you did the metro connection. So each time you create the ability of people to either travel or communicate, you add an amazing multiplier. Can you tell us what are the 2 or 3 big plans that you have right now which you think will make this mission work? What is being done right now which is different from what was done? Because we did have an open skies policy, we did build some of the larger airports, but we've still not gone into the hinterland. So what are you doing differently right now?
Thank you very much, Sunil, and a very good afternoon to all of you, since we've just crossed 12 p.m., so we are now into the afternoon. Very glad we have a chance to sit and chat about some of these very important topics. As you know, the Honorable Prime Minister has said that we have to reform, perform, and transform. And Honorable Venkaiah Naidu has added to it inform as well. So it's reform, perform, transform, and inform. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to inform here. But if you look at aviation right now, it really is a wonderful example of a sunrise sector where we can tell that full story of reform, perform, transform, and inform. And part of how we are trying to inform is to really be able to, in a colorful way, in an idiomatic way, explain what the mission is. And the mission is, Hawai chappal wale ko bhi Hawai jahaj pe baithayenge. Because the idea is that we need to bring the benefits of air connectivity to every person. It's really part of our Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas thinking. Air connectivity is the most efficient and lowest cost way of connecting long distances. So anything once you get past 150 kilometers, on a cost per kilometer basis, air travel is the cheapest and lowest carbon way of connecting people. Because you essentially just have an airport and you have a plane, and that's it. You don't need any infrastructure in the middle. And with the technology that is being developed right now of composite materials, of very efficient jet engines, and so on, the actual cost of travel is now at 4 rupees a kilometer and dropping. So at 4 rupees a kilometer, which is less than even taking a three-wheeler, you can travel long distances. So aviation is a very important sector for the economy as we want to move towards friction-free growth. And we need to bring the benefits of aviation and connectivity to as many places as possible. I will add one more factor as we think of air connectivity, which is that we have a lot of places in India that are in remote, inaccessible regions, whether it's the hilly areas of the Himalayas or the Northeast, where even traveling 30, 40, 50, 60 kilometers because of the hilly terrain can take 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours. And even if you build roads, the roads are on very fragile sort of geology and are very apt to be swept away with landslides and so on. So in those remote areas and also our islands, Lakshadweep, Andaman, Nicobar and so on, air connectivity is vital because all other forms of transport become very difficult. So connectivity is very important for us. Now we are following 3 policies that are really hopefully going to unleash this very efficient and very convenient form of transportation for everyone. Number one, what we are doing is we are really opening and liberalizing up aviation so that lots of planes are purchased, lots of FDI comes in, lot of investment happens. And we now have perhaps the most open FDI regime in the world for aviation. So whether it's aerospace manufacturing, whether it's airlines, whether it's airports, we have a tremendously open regime for investment as far as aviation is concerned. So that's the number one thing that we've done, which is to really throw open the aviation sector. The number 2 very important thing that we're doing is that we are focusing on passenger conveniences. So whether it is changing the way in which refunds and cancellations are done, regulating how much baggage you can take on a plane, or even providing Air Seva, which is an integrated portal across all the players of the ecosystem to handle your grievances and complaints, we are really pursuing a very passenger-centric approach to making air travel convenient, affordable, and very, very friendly for consumers. Because we also have a lot of travelers. So that's the second very important thing we're doing, making it very passenger-centric. The third thing, which you've already alluded to, Sunil, is what we are doing with Udan. Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. To understand the importance of Udan, let me throw out a few numbers and statistics at you. We essentially have 2 aviation markets in this country. The international aviation market, when you fly in and out of India, and the domestic aviation market. The international aviation market is about 5.5 crore passenger trips a year. The domestic aviation market is 10 crore passenger trips a year. So at about 15.5 crore passenger trips a year, we now have the 3rd largest aviation market in the world. We're already the 3rd largest aviation market in the world. However, if you look at the domestic aviation market, it is what I characterize as being only a national aviation market, which means that the bulk of the travel is between the top 8 metros. The vast majority of air travel is between these 8 metros. So we really only have a national aviation market. We don't have a regional aviation market. What do I mean by a regional aviation market? It's between Bikaner, Jaisalmer, Jodhpur to Jaipur, for instance. It's between Bhavnagar, Rajkot, Surat to Ahmedabad, for instance. Whereas Ahmedabad to Delhi is the national aviation market. But we really have not been able to develop a regional aviation market, even though the national aviation market is developed. So with Udan, we've come up with a regional connectivity scheme, which provides an incentive, a subsidy for people to really open up tier 3 and tier 4 cities. Ludhiana, which you will appreciate, Sunil, Jamshedpur, Kanpur, Gwalior, Agra, Gorakhpur, cities like this which are very large, very vibrant cities themselves, but had very poor air connectivity. So with Udan, we've really unleashed this regional aviation market so that now in just 1 year, we've added 33 new airports to the aviation market. Previously, we had 75 airports that were operational. With Udan, in 1 year, we've added 33 new airports. And we've done that with, thank you. So 70, ladies and gentlemen, 75 years of civil aviation, 75 operational airports, an airport a year. With the kind of transformational, game-changing reforms that we put in place, in 1 year, 33 new airports have been added. And here's the best part. It's not costing us a lot. It's costing us very little, in fact. We've added 33 new airports with a subsidy of only 205 crores. 205 crores, 33 new airports. And in fact, Honorable Prime Minister is going to launch Udan on April 27th, when we will be landing a flight in Shimla, which has not seen any air service for decades now, I'm told. So these are the kinds of game-changing things that we're doing. We are opening up, as I said, places like Shimla, places like Gorakhpur, places like Kanpur. Kanpur is a huge city, no air services at all. Can you imagine? We as part of Udan, put in a flight to Kanpur, it's going chock-a-block. We're adding flights to it very quickly. New terminal is being built. These are the kinds of services that we're adding as part of Udan. So just coming back to your first question, Sunil, what are the 3 major game-changing initiatives? Number 1, opening up the sector dramatically. Number 2, taking a passenger-centric focus. Number 3, unlocking the regional aviation market through Udan. These are the 3 game-changing things we've done in aviation virtually in the last couple of years.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the airlines themselves. You know, worldwide, there are only 5 airlines which actually make money consistently. All 5 of them have an identical business model. And sometimes one wonders, why do more airlines not follow this path if it is known that this makes money? When you ask them the question, most of these airlines in India at least, the low-cost airlines, say we are actually low-priced airlines. We're not low-cost airlines. We park at the same airports, we pay the same taxes, we pay the same parking charges, we pay the same fuel charges. Every cost we're paying is the same. Worldwide, low-cost airlines actually have a lower cost because they have infrastructure which is available to them at a lower cost. Is that a model which you think is viable in India to allow 2 parallel tracks to run?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Sunil. If you really look at profitable business models in aviation, and you know, I have been, an investor for many years, so I look at these kinds of facts very, very carefully across the business cycle, because what happens is you have boom-bust periods. But if you look across the business cycle and you look at effectively equity IRRs, not necessarily return on invested capital, but equity IRRs, you'll find actually that there are 3 or 4 different types of business models that have been successful. I'll give you what they are. Number 1 is obviously, as you pointed out, the low-cost carriers, the Ryan Jets, Southwest Airlines, and so on, that have been very successful in following these low-cost business models. The number 2 way in which people have made money in the aviation business across the business cycle has been in international long haul, which is more full service. So international long haul would be Lufthansa, would be British Airways, would be Singapore Airlines. These are businesses that have actually made money over the business cycle by following the international long haul. Emirates is another good example.
But they're all stressed right now.
Well, no, that's not true, actually. They're doing, right now the aviation industry is going through one of its boom periods because of aviation turbine fuel being as low as it is in price right now. But so international long haul has done well. Then there's a third model which has largely been successful in the US, which is really the hub and spoke business model of large, very large airlines like American, Delta, and Continental, where they have been able to establish their fortress hubs and run very large hub and spoke networks as well. That model also has been quite successful over the business cycle, though it has gone through some difficult periods as well because of excess capacity. So all three of these models tend to work. We will, of course, I think, evolve to these models in India as well over time, because over decades in the aviation industry globally, these are the business models that have worked. I think we'll evolve there in India. Now, in India, we have a particular challenge, and you have touched on it. The particular challenge that we have in aviation in India is, while our fares, our pricing, are among the lowest in the world. So when you actually fly Delhi, Mumbai, or you fly Bangalore, Chennai, or you fly Kolkata to Hyderabad, you are paying among the lowest airfares in the world on our airlines. And that is a great tribute to what our airlines have been able to do, is to be able to provide those very affordable fares. However, we also have among the highest costs in the world. And that's because our aviation turbine fuel is expensive. We have generally high taxes. Our airports are relatively expensive as well when you compare them to, Love Field in Dallas, for instance, or you look at, the pricing that you get at O'Hare in Chicago or in Atlanta Hartsfield. So our airports are actually relatively expensive in large measure because our land in general in India is expensive. And airports obviously use a lot of land. So our costs are high, but our fares are low. And the net result of it is that the actual return on invested capital and equity IRR for our airlines has, in fact, over the cycle been quite low, which is for us, because we really need to add capacity and we need to be able to expand air connectivity, is a bit of a challenge, because we need people to make investments, not just in airlines, but in all the associated ecosystem that goes with that: MRO, catering, ground handling, aerospace manufacturing. All of these are vitally important associated parts of the ecosystem that also need to develop. The demand is there, and it's our job in government to make sure that we can bring down costs sustainably for our airlines and for the other members of our ecosystem, so that the aviation industry as a whole can flourish.
I want to talk to you a little bit about Jayant as a person, not as a minister. You have an intellectual writer as a mother. You have an intellectual politician as a father. You yourself did some pretty interesting things. In class 11, I'm told you cleared the IIT JEE. And at HBS, you were actively writing as well, including about robber barons, I'm told. Tell us a little bit about how you have come from where you were in doing this in class 11 to getting on to becoming a fund manager. Incidentally, I also believe you met your wife during college as well. So by the way, who was managing more money? Was it you or
No, Punita has always managed much more money than I have. She's a very successful fund manager, as you know. In fact, was one of the first FIIs in India back in 91, 92.
Blackstone.
That's Oppenheimer.
Right. Oppenheimer, right. So what do you actually enjoy doing other than your work right now? Because I'm sure this takes long hours. What do you spend your free time, if you have any, doing?
With the limited free time that I have, I always obviously try to spend as much time with the family as possible, because that is something that is great for me personally, and obviously they want me to spend time with them as well. So family comes first, as you might well imagine. And then after that, whatever else time I have, there are three things that I enjoy doing tremendously. One is playing tennis, because I'm a big tennis fan. I played tennis in school for my state. I played tennis for IIT. So I've played tennis very competitively and very seriously for all of my life. The second thing I enjoy doing is actually writing, as you touched. I have a family of writers. Everybody has written. My mother is a very well-known author of children's books, both in Hindi and in English. And so I also enjoy writing, and I write often in the newspapers and so on. And then, after that, if I have time, I will read. Of course, I read all the newspapers and magazines in any case, but I also enjoy reading both non-fiction and fiction, and I almost always have a book that I'm trying to read as quickly as possible as well.
We recently had a strange incident happen where a member of parliament had an altercation with an airline staff member, and what followed became national news, whether the airlines should ban travel, not ban travel. What did you say to Mr. Gaikwad when you met him in parliament?
Some conversations are best left undiscussed. But I want to clarify some very important aspects of what happened, which I, of course, discussed in the media and through a series of tweets as well. And we really have to think about that incident in three parts. Part one is that what happened on March 23rd on that Air India flight 852 coming from Pune to Delhi will have consequences. There have been two FIRs that have been filed. One of them is for Section 308, culpable homicide. The other is for Section 355. And there, the law will take its own course. It's a matter of police investigation to determine what happened. And, whatever the outcome is, that the police will undertake. So that matter is obviously being worked out. The second aspect of this is the actual no-fly announcement that was made, and which was in effect ultimately for 2 weeks. And there what we said was that because we were not sure of how best to proceed, that it was important during that time to engage in a dialogue and to get an undertaking from Shri Gaikwad that these kinds of incidents would not happen again. And we received that undertaking from him, and because we received that undertaking from him and from Parliament as an institution as well, that the conduct would be appropriate to that environment of being on an airplane and so on. With that safeguard in place and with that undertaking, we felt that it was appropriate to lift and revoke the no-fly ban. So that was part two of what happened. Part three, of course, is now for us collectively as a society, as a country, to step back and say, what do we need to do to ensure that all of you, as air passengers, are going to be safe in the air? And as Honorable Shri Ashok Gajapati Rajuji said in Parliament and several times thereafter, we cannot compromise on safety in any way, because you're up 35,000 feet in the sky, and it's extraordinarily important in that very fragile environment to ensure that we have an appropriate environment, and everybody is safe, passengers are safe, cabin crew is safe. And so we as a society have to step back and ask ourselves, what kinds of watertight safeguards do we have in place to ensure that all passengers behave in an appropriate manner, and that we strongly regulate unruly and disruptive conduct in the air. That is really what we are engaged in right now. We are in consultations with various stakeholders to figure out how to put in place more effective rules around that kind of behavior. You all know from the newspapers, and we've heard this with a lot of evidence backing this up from all the airlines, that incidents of unruly and disruptive behavior in our skies and on our airlines have been increasing. So it is in fact a very serious matter that we have to think about. We also know that the current rules in India and around the world are quite effective in terms of dealing with a specific incidents on a specific flight. But the question becomes, what do you do proactively and preemptively? Which is, if people behave in a certain way on a flight or one or two flights, how far do we prevent them from flying thereafter? Now, on that, ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you, because we've studied this matter around the world, we are actually in uncharted waters. And I'm not talking about security. National security is a different matter. I'm talking about safety considerations. There are no IATA guidelines on this right now. There are no guidelines in the US or the UK or Germany or Japan or other major markets. We've studied all that very carefully. So in a way, what we do in terms of establishing certain restrictions on flying going forward based on unruly stroke disruptive behavior will be setting a precedent not just for India but for the world. And that's why we have to think this through carefully. We have to understand exactly how to implement it, who will be responsible for implementation, for making decisions, what will be the appeal process, what are the categories of punishments or restrictions that will come into place, and how we will revise and refine this going forward. So it's actually a fairly serious matter. As I said, we have 155 million people, 15.5 crore passenger trips a year, growing at 20% a year. So a lot of Indians are flying. This affects all of us. And so this whole question, which is part 3 of this issue, which is how do we regulate this going forward, is a serious matter that we should collectively as a society consider.
I'm going to ask you a question or two on finance, because that's also been an area you've been involved with. And then we'll open it for an interactive session with the audience as well. You know, the last budget, taxes were lowered for small and mid-sized enterprises from 30 to 25%. Do you think this can or will or has led to better compliance? And I want to add a second one, which is not, it's finance but not quite connected to this, is on GST. What is your belief in all the benefits that we will actually get with GST getting rolled out? And do you think GST can be rolled out by the 1st of July?
I absolutely think that we will roll out GST on July 1st. I think all of us in government are committed to that, and I think it'll be fantastic for the country. And I think what we've done in GST certainly deserves a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. It's a historic transformational thing. And what I will say on GST is that no other country in the world could have achieved what we have achieved in GST. Remember, we are a very complex political economy in terms of the federal structure. And the manner in which we have pooled together the fiscal powers of the center and the states and established an entirely new federal institution, which is the GST Council, to deal with this pooling of indirect taxing powers is extraordinary. There is no other country in the world that is as large and complex as India and as federal in India that has pulled this off. And if you look at a comparable like, for example, the United States and say, is it even conceivable in the United States that there could be this kind of a pooling of indirect taxing powers? The answer is absolutely not. It just is beyond the realm of the possible, I think, in the US to pull it off, because states zealously guard their fiscal powers. So it's an extraordinary accomplishment. And is a, you know, as some commentator said, you know, the finest hour for us as a constitutional democracy to be able to pull this off. So I think we really need to acknowledge what has actually happened, because it's profoundly, profoundly transformational for India to have accomplished that. I think the other thing that it demonstrates is that we are a very effective democracy when it is required. Now, there are some people who say, well, it took you 11 years to do that, because we started the process in 2006. The reality is I'm very glad it's taken us 10 or 11 years to do this, because it has therefore established that consensus for this very transformational change. And in a democracy, that kind of a consensus, that kind of unanimity which has been done, I think is what makes it a rock solid consensus. So I think it is an absolutely fantastic accomplishment. Now, let's step back from GST. Let's step back from demonetization and really ask ourselves as a government, what is our overriding goal here? What are we really trying to accomplish? Ladies and gentlemen, fundamentally, as we move towards being an advanced economy, we have to formalize our economy. We have to formalize our economy. And to formalize our economy, we have to ensure that transactions are tracked, they're monitored, and that they're compliant. The more cash we have floating around in the system, the less it becomes possible for us to formalize the economy. And what we are doing is bringing down cash to GDP, which was at 12%, was very, very unhealthy for us. Cash to GDP at 12%. And we are increasing tax to GDP, which at 16, 17%, center plus states, was much too low. For an advanced economy, China, good example, tax to GDP is 21, 22%, state plus center. We are at 16, 17%. Now, you ask Indian citizens, what do they want? They want more public goods. They want better infrastructure. They want more social welfare. They want better education. They want better health care. But those are public goods that can only be supplied if our tax to GDP goes up. And our tax to GDP cannot go up unless we formalize our economy and bring down cash to GDP. And so what we are trying to do through these efforts is really formalize the economy, bring what was happening in the shadows. Bring what was happening in the shadows, in the parallel black economy, into the digitized as well as formal economy, and really enable us to be able to gain more in taxes and make sure that our businesses and our taxpayers are compliant. And that's really what we're doing right now. If we don't do that, we are not going to become a developed economy. We are not going to become a mature, advanced economy that can compete with China, that can compete with the US, that can compete with Australia. So that is the only way in which we can build prosperity in the country. And I think, again, I'm sorry to say this a second time, but I think you owe a round of applause for an incredible set of historic and courageous moves by the Honorable Prime Minister for demonetization and for really putting us on this path towards a much more formalized economy.
I want to reconfirm this, Jayant, because I've actually been involved a little bit right from Kelkar committee days, which made the original recommendation for the VAT and GST. And also from industry's behalf, some of us have led this discussion with governments, both center and state. So this is truly transformational, truly transformational. But it's also a fact what you said a little earlier, there is no blue book written for us. There's no democracy of our size trying to turn into a market economy after giving full civil liberties. Never been done. So ladies and gentlemen, we have about 10 minutes to go. So if there are any questions in the audience, kindly raise your hand. We'll try and get a mic to you. There's a question, mic right here, please. Can you hold the mic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. It was wonderful to hear your presentation on civil aviation. So one of the main challenges today, people with disabilities are facing a major challenge while traveling by planes. I mean, especially in terms of airport security. There have been people who are amputees whose prosthetics have been removed. I myself have been not allowed to board a plane once because the security did not understand my battery. And globally, there are technologies like explosive trace detection machines that have been used by various Western countries to resolve this issue. I was just wondering what is the Civil Aviation Ministry doing for people with disabilities to travel by planes?
No, thank you for asking that question. And I apologize, and I feel very badly if you've had to suffer an inconvenience in the airport for your having to go through security and so on. Let me first tell you that we have a portal. It's a mobile app as well as a web portal called Air Seva, where you can register any specific complaint. We've received thousands of complaints through Air Seva. More than 90% of them have been resolved to people's satisfaction. So we track all those incidents and we find what we need to do to improve if people are not doing things correctly. So please, if you have any complaint, send it to us via Air Seva. We are very diligent in terms of following up and tracking how those complaints are being addressed. Now, with respect to the specific question about people with disabilities, we have a very well-established SOP associated with how we deal with people with disability as we take them through security and as we board them on planes and so on. That whole set of protocols is up on the website. You can take a look. If you feel it needs to be modified in any way, please let us know. Give us a detailed letter to that regard. We will certainly take that into consideration and make whatever adjustments are appropriate. But our expectation is that all security staff, all security personnel follow that to the letter and the spirit. And if there are any violations, you should let us know. The global standard on prosthetics, by the way, because this question has come up many times, is that they can be taken off and investigated for security, because there have been situations where they have been found to be a security violation. So because we have to take into account the safety of all passengers, in certain cases, there will have to be that kind of investigation as well. And you please should understand, that as far as India is concerned, we live in a very dangerous neighborhood, and we've had many, many security threats, which mean that our security staff have to be extra vigilant on all of these measures, not just obviously in this case, but in many other cases as well. But nonetheless, if you feel there are any violations or anybody has dealt with you rudely or impolitely or violated with respect to the protocol, please let us know and we'll immediately take action. Thank you.
Rajesh.
Thank you. So congratulations on the various activities of the last few years and your many plans for the future. Now, air travel is considered to be the safest form of travel. Yet we keep reading about near misses. Now, I don't know what a near miss is. Is it a miss by a few 100 meters or more than that? But are we doing something dramatically, considering the fact that you want to increase air travel so much, to improve this and see that nothing happens?
I would just caution you on over-interpreting what you read in the media about near misses. Every time anything happens where we feel that there is any concern with respect to safety, there is a very elaborate and detailed procedure for investigating that. And DGCA very diligently follows up on all these investigations. In some cases, what is called a near miss in the media is not necessarily a near miss. It is diligently investigated and we come to that conclusion. The other thing that we have done is that we have looked at it statistically. Obviously, because air travel is growing as quickly as it is, you have to try and understand relative to the total number of flight movements or total number of passengers, what is India's safety record? And I'm not talking security, I'm just talking flight safety here. What is our safety record relative to any number of global benchmarks on a per passenger basis, per flight basis, per movement basis, per airport, per airline, all of those, there's a tremendous amount of analytics that goes into looking into all of those safety issues. And as, as we can sort of best ascertain based on this kind of very detailed analysis, we are doing quite well as far as safety is concerned.
Thank you. The one hand raised right at the back first.
Thank you, sir, for specifically the demonetization and digitalization initiative by the government. And I think that is the only way forward, going and formalizing the Indian economy. But concerns of, I think, most citizens are, why are banking transactions and digital transactions becoming more and more expensive? Isn't it a disincentive to digitalize and formalize the economy?
I'd like to correct your impression there, because if you look at Bheem and Aadhaar enabled payment bridge and so on, those are very low cost transactions and in some cases are absolutely zero cost transactions as well. And therefore what we are offering for digital payment today in India is probably the most affordable digital payment transaction platform in the world. Now, obviously, if you utilize credit or debit, then it's not just a payment transaction for credit, for instance, because what is bundled into a credit transaction is actually credit itself. And so you are effectively paying for that underwriting, you're paying for that risk assessment, you're paying for credit. But when you're doing a pure payment transaction like with Bheem or with APS, it's a very, very, very affordable transaction.
A number of hands were raised, but we'll take this as the last one if you don't mind, because we're running out of time now.
What is the government's strategy to make a triple P model more efficient with a long-term growth perspective? Like,
so to make what more efficient?
The triple P model more efficient. Like, what are the key measures that you take? Like?
Yeah. We are very blessed in India to have had tremendous experience with PPP projects. By some counts, I think in India we've probably done more PPP projects than virtually anywhere else in the world. So we have a very rich set of case studies and a lot of empirical knowledge of what works and what doesn't work. And so we've been continuously improving the manner in which we have been conducting our PPPs. A very good example of that is the hybrid annuity methodology that has been worked out in the Road Transport Ministry very, very successfully to get a lot of our highways going right now. Similarly, as far as aviation is concerned, if you look at the kind of OMDA agreements that we've got for greenfield airports now coming on stream, like Mopa in Goa, or the ways in which we are encouraging O&M contracts for Jaipur and Ahmedabad, We are continuously refining and improving the manner in which we are putting out PPPs in aviation to make it a win-win for all parties. Obviously, for all three PPPs as well, it should be a win-win.
So I know a number of hands were raised, so I need to apologize to all those who had raised their hands who did not get a chance. But Jayant, thank you very much for being part of this Mindmine exchange and being part of this 11th Mindmine Summit. This was both interesting and informative. So thank you for making the time and informing us of what transformative stuff is actually going on. One hears little bits and pieces here and there. In the morning we had Mr. Venkaiah Naidu also give us some information about some of these, which is always useful for us to hear firsthand from all of you who are literally in the middle of all the action. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for polling. Now it's time for polling. But before we start, all of you have a voting pad on your table. So if you can just pick it up, that's right. For a moment, drop your mobile phones. Okay, so now voting pad, if you can see, there's a power button on the extreme left top end. The moment you press power, there you see the digits appear. Now the question that I'm going to place, there will be 4 options with it. It will be either A, B, C, or D. As per the option explained, press whichever option that you find is suitable to your opinion, and in the end, press OK, which is on the extreme top right. So I hope you've switched on your voting pads. Now here we start with the first polling. It is a real possibility for a person wearing Hawaii chappals to fly soon. Those who agree, press A. Those who disagree, press B. Those who are neutral, press C. And if you can't say anything, please press D. Once you've pressed, do not forget to press OK, which is on the top right end, as that will finally stamp your decision. 15 seconds is what you have. Your time's on. You can think about it. 15 seconds is a lot of time. Is it a real possibility for a person wearing Hawaii chappals to fly soon? And there you go with the result. So a big round of applause for A. A big thank you to our Honorable Minister, Mr. Jayant Sinha. Would request Mr. Munjal to kindly present a memoir to Sir over here. Can we have a round of applause?
Hello. Yeah, I'll just make one comment. You know, obviously for all of us in public life, we often go to events like this and conferences, and we always get some souvenir or some thing of appreciation and so on. And what I'm suggesting to all the different events I go to, rather than giving us one of these, I would suggest, why don't you give a donation to a charity of your choosing? And you can just give that to me, and that I think will be something which will be much more appreciated than just giving us.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.